Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Dr. Carole Holland here. Welcome to my very first ever episode of Covered in It. It's a podcast series that I want to start. It's going to be raw, it's going to be funny, it's going to be real, it's going to be emotional. I've been a vet for 40 years now, and I just wanted to look back on this life and tell the wonderful stories. We have so many veterinarians that are wanting to be vets, but the life is so hard, but it's so rewarding. And what I've found one day when I was 3 o'clock in the morning going, why am I doing this? I realized, I've always been covered in something, whether I was standing in mud or covered in pee or poop or vomit or horse snot or any one of those bodily fluids. I also realized, I'm covered in debt and despair and hopelessness. And then I said, why am I even doing this? And then I'm covered in love and fulfillment and happiness. So my podcast is going to be from the mundane to the miracles, from the exciting to the uninteresting. But what I hope is that you listen and have a wonderful time listening to me and maybe get some information. I'm going to have some interviews. I'm going to have some possible information that will be interesting. But basically, in the end, you're going to see everything I've been covered in and everything about veterinary medicine. I think it'd be a great place to start to let you guys know why I became a vet in the first place. And when I was 8 years old, I had already been introduced to my dad's cows, and my dad had given me a pony when I was 6 years old. And honestly, I had no idea of anything else I could ever do other than, take care of animals and be outside and take care of the horses, and made it my life's goal after that to be a vet. Even though I grew up in Georgia, there weren't any, I don't even think we had a vet in the small little town where I grew up. But eventually I found a small animal veterinarian who I wanted to get a job with when I was 16, which was many, many years ago. I walked into his office and he was like, oh, there's no glamour in this. You're just a young girl looking for glamour. And even that didn't discourage me. I decided to go to another vet until I could finally get a job. And my first veterinary job was in a small animal clinic, and I was cleaning the cages, sweeping the floors, and working and did everything that he possibly said, because we didn't even have any horse vets around where I grew up. But after that, I just decided that there was nothing that was going to stop me. I ended up going to the University of Georgia, graduated after 7 years of school, and started and haven't looked back since then. So a really interesting thing that happened to me, an opportunity that was available when I was in college at the University of Georgia, was we could apply early to veterinary school. And I just thought that was the bomb, because all I wanted to do was go to veterinary school. So I had been to 3 years of undergrad, and I just took a chance and applied, and I got an interview. And I was like, wow, I got an interview. And I think I was maybe 18 or 19 years old, because I'd gotten into college really early. So I went into my interview and I was so nervous. I had talked to several people that had their interview, and 3 veterinarians were there. I don't remember their names, but they were some of my professors later in school. And the only question after all of my preparation that they asked me was, do I know what the bluebird is? And then they might have said something like, why do you want to be a vet? And I thought, oh my gosh, I will never get in. I didn't know what a bluebird was other than a bird, and I answered it that way. And so I got out, and the next day I got a letter saying, congratulations, you got in. I hadn't graduated from college yet. I didn't even need a degree to get in vet school. I could get my degree after my first year, which was amazing. So there I was, heading off to vet school. It took me a year to find out what the bluebird was. It was actually a cafe in Athens, Georgia at the university, near the university where everybody met on Sundays. So clearly I had studied way too much and tried to get into vet school with perfect grades and never went out to eat. So I didn't know what the bluebird was. Anyway, I got into vet school. The first year was probably the toughest year of any school I'd ever had in my life. I did not enjoy anatomy class with the formaldehyde smell, having to learn every single possible point on, carcasses of animals. It sounds horrible, but they used them over and over again for the safety. But anyway, I made it through, studying extremely hard, not really having any other life. Other than that, that summer I decided to get a job working in a, believe it or not, pig farm at the University of Georgia, where I tested pigs for body fat on a research, just trying to get well-rounded with everything and to help make money to pay my way through vet school. The second year of vet school, the most I remember is about parasitology, which is learning about all the parasites and what they cause and the diseases, which was just another challenging year. And I'm meeting my friends, and I was the youngest person in vet school in my class because I had just crammed everything in that I could possibly cram in and try to get into vet school early. So I really was not socially involved with a lot of the people because some of them had been trying for years to get in, and they kept their dream alive. My dream came early. Third year, amazing. Third year, we started to get to go into clinics. We started to get to pay attention to everything. I had also volunteered to be on what's called a colic team, which sounds crazy that you want to volunteer to help with colics, but what we would do at night is we would go assist anything from cleaning to assisting in surgeries. I organized all the groups of everyone that, any of the students that wanted to be on call for that. So we would go into the University of Georgia. They did a lot of colic research there then, and it was sort of primary as a focus at my school to do that. So that was also another interesting thing that I did. After third year, fourth year, how wonderful could I have made it to be a senior? I finally got there. I didn't flunk out. Still had all my friends in school, so we got to start going on rounds. We got to pick externships. We got to pick wonderful classes. We could take a little bit of time off, but not so much still. I took all of my 12 weeks and put it into equine studies, which was not looked well upon by the small animal clinicians. I still had to do 6 weeks of small animal, which actually turned out to be absolutely wonderful. I learned so much from my professors at the University of Georgia then. And then rolls around May 6th, 1986. I know I'm aging myself, but next year will be 40 years. But 1986, it rolled around and I graduated. And I was like, what am I going to do? I want to be an equine practitioner. I'm in Georgia. There weren't many equine practitioners, so one of my very fun professors said, call this guy. I called him to get a job, and I was driving there, and unfortunately, he was flying his own plane, and it crashed. And he and his wife and 2 other people died in the plane. So I didn't have a job. So I actually went together with a couple of other veterinarians with his group of practice in Aiken, South Carolina. Tried to do that, but knew absolutely nothing, and then ended up taking a job in New York at the racetrack at Belmont Park. So that started my racetrack learning and started to be at the thoroughbred racetrack. I worked for one practice, changed after 3 months, and went back and worked for another practice for 2 or 3 years. I'd have to go back and actually count the days, but it was the most wonderful experience. I had a great boss. He worked for the best racehorses at Belmont Park. We saw Belmont Stakes winners, Kentucky Derby winners. I got to meet all the wonderful trainers that worked there at the time. And I know the racing industry is maligned, but those horses get such wonderful care, the ultimate care. So I learned the most crucial thing I think a veterinarian can learn is how to manage horses that do not want to get shots. Young racehorses did not want to get any shots. So we, as veterinarians, we had to learn to do that quickly. And my skills at lameness and my skills at giving shots and doing treatments became very honed because of safety reasons. Because I was the only girl at Belmont Park for a long time, I think there might have been 2 other girl vets at the time that were working there. I would always get a lot of opportunities to go work and get instances of seeing a lot of different horses. I learned to take x-rays really well, but back in those days, we were still dipping the films in tanks. Now we all have digital x-rays. I mean, I'm so old, you guys that know horses. There wasn't even Adequan. There wasn't even Dormocidin. And everybody that listens to this that knows these drugs commonly, we didn't have any of that when I started as a vet. We did not even have an ultrasound when I started as a vet to use as therapy or to use as any kind of diagnostics. So I feel like I was on the forefront of the beginning of all the exciting stuff that's starting, but I was also gave me the opportunity to learn to hone my skills in palpation, observation, and what really, really happens. So as I'm working there on the racetrack, I was introduced to a veterinarian, Dr. Jim Kinney, who did acupuncture. And his calm, easygoing demeanor, the way he would talk and teach, and the way he worked around the horses, whenever I got a chance from my boss, I would just go follow Dr. Kinney around and watch what he did with acupuncture. And this was like 1990 or 1991, and nobody was doing acupuncture back then on animals. Maybe not even people, I don't really know. But I decided to follow him and see what he could teach me back then. And it was amazing. And I just kept grasping at places to go. But because I was a young vet in a practice where I might have had 2 hours off a week, I didn't have any vacation time, I didn't get any time off, I really couldn't go to seminars back then. They frowned on that. It was not like it is now. But so I didn't really get a chance to go take any classes. So I followed Dr. Kinney. He gave me some things to read. You know, we did not even have internet back then. So it wasn't like I could go Google what is acupuncture. I had to go research it and look in a library. But it was pretty fun. So I learned again using my palpation skills and learning about the horses by doing, not by reading or doing anything like that. So when it rolled around in 1995, there was a chiropractic class taught out in Kansas, or actually in Illinois. So I went out there to take the chiropractic class in 95 and 96. I finished that, and then it rolled around in 1999 and 2000. Dr. Shea came to the University of Florida. He's a Chinese veterinarian that has just opened up the world to acupuncture in animals. So I started with him then, and based on all of the training that I had learned from the racetrack and learned from my palpation skills, it turned into a wonderful segue for me to learn this part of my business. I developed into a practitioner that could use not only Western medicine, but also Chinese veterinary medicine, and now we've sort of coined the term integrative veterinary medicine. So once again, in my true fashion, I dived in wholeheartedly into learning about acupuncture, about herbal medicine, about alternative chiropractic, just so because I felt like these sport horses needed another way to feel better after working on the racetrack for all those years. And to do that, I couldn't really spend the time on the racetrack because the racetrack time is very demanding. So I decided to move to Wellington, Florida. Wellington, Florida, and this was from New York to Wellington. So Wellington, Florida was just still in the birth phase of its career. It had started for about 12 years maybe, but not as big as it is now. So I decided to come here and start doing acupuncture, and had some miracle cases, really amazing cases. I had a horse that was about to have its eye removed that I did acupuncture and herbs, and we saved the eye, and the owner was forever grateful and sent me pictures until the horse turned 30 years old. That was just one case. I had several colics that got better. I had a broodmare that had a ruptured artery that I used Chinese herbs on to stop the bleeding enough to where they could get in and do surgery for her and save her. There were several cases, and at that time it was not even heard of. Nobody knew about the Chinese herbs, and because I felt like I had a license to work and a license to heal and a license to create this new endeavor, I just went in with both feet and would always call my professor, Dr. Shea, and he was so wonderful and kept telling me I was a pioneer in this business, so the motivation was there to keep going. And I started with a big practice in Wellington to create acupuncture and herbals. I did that for a few years and then decided, I really want to be on my own, and instead of just doing alternative medicine, I wanted to create the integrative medicine. So for the past, since about 2008, I've done integrative medicine on my own. I've created the business, I've established, I've taught, I've created a program for internship for people, I've given lectures around the world, and just really grown with this business that I love so much. During my vet school career, it was amazing. The University of Georgia just had the most wonderful, down-to-earth professors, everyone you could connect to in a certain way. And I had this field services professor that was amazing. He told wonderful stories. I had great surgeons, and everybody seemed to really care. So that motivation inspired me to want to be a motivator for students and a motivator for young veterinarians. And some of my favorite stories and my memories go back to my professors in vet school. I'll never forget the first time my professor took me out with him. And he was a bodybuilder, a huge man that had, large biceps, large triceps, and just worked out a lot. And we went out to an Arabian farm. And on this Arabian farm, and you guys that know Arabians, if you don't know Arabians, the foals are tiny. They're 50 pounds. And that's normal. So we had to draw blood on this little Arabian foal because it had a fever. And he's like, okay, you're going to be a vet here. I want you to hit the vein on this foal. I'm going to hold it. And one of the ways to restrain a foal is to put your arms under the neck and hold the tail. And that's just a normal restraint, and the foal becomes sort of immobile. And it's not hurting. It doesn't hurt him or anything. But he said, okay, go for it. So there was this huge vein. I'm ready to hit the vein. I knew I could do it. I'd been practicing. And he gave me an 18-gauge needle with a 5cc syringe. So now I would never use an 18-gauge needle, but I went to go put the needle in the foal's vein to collect the blood sample, and the foal jumped and the needle went in his arm. And he looked at me and I looked at him, and I pulled it out, and I was like, oh no, his plaid shirt is starting to bleed. And he looked at me and gritted his teeth and said, get a new needle and do it again. So I went, ran to the truck, and I came back, and I could see the blood trail on his plaid shirt on the long sleeve. I went back to do it, and it happened again. The foal jumped, and the needle went in his arm in a different location. And he just looked at me and said, I will give you one more chance to do this again. The third time, I could feel the needle scrape the bone on my professor's arm. You can imagine my professor's arm is almost as big as the foal's neck. So I did have a disadvantage. The fourth time I finally got the needle in the foal. Thank goodness I didn't stick the foal 4 times. But his shirt was completely bloody. He never complained, and he just kept going and said, now I think I'm your first patient, but let's keep going. He never yelled at me, never complained. But one time I was at a conference, I think it was even a big conference like AAP or something, and he was giving a lecture on field services. And I walked into the lecture, he didn't know I was there, and I could hear him telling the story of a student that did their first acupuncture case on him, and I knew it was me. So those kind of inspiring stories, where you have people that just, you want to do it, and he keeps telling you, you're going to be okay, you're going to be okay, inspired me also to bring forth a lot of my personal stories to where if it can be done wrong, I'm going to do it, but believe me, I'll learn a lesson, and we'll make it better for the next time. He also had some other wonderful stories about going out on horse calls, which I'm going to give you guys those stories. It's amazing to learn what we can really do with animals. Even if we just have the skills, but we've never seen a case before, if you can be creative, you can learn how to make them all better. We have such great licenses and great permission to heal animals in our lives. And I think sometimes when you just have the love and the intervention and your skills, it always makes everything better. So this ends my first exciting ever episode of Covered in It. I just want you guys to let me know what you think. I want you to ask questions. I want you to send me messages. Tell me what you want to know. I have some very exciting stories that I'll tell later, stories about what I've been covered in, what you could be covered in, every possible emotion you can be covered in, every possible exudate you can be covered in, every possible fluid. But mainly in the end, it's all about the love that we want to give and the love that we receive. So please send me some messages, and I look forward to seeing you again.